Alrighty, hello everyone. I know there's a few people missing, but we might as well get started with the homework that I assigned last week. So if you guys don't remember, what we had assigned for homework was right here. So what you're gonna do is write a story that uses a similar style of wordplay of the story that we talked about last week. And then write a paragraph of when you saw someone you recognized in a strange situation. So that was the homework that was assigned last week. So while we wait for other people to show up, please send what you have. And if you didn't do it, that's okay. Just like send me a message saying that you weren't able to do it, just so I know, just so I know, uh, and I can note it down. So please send me what you guys have done. If you haven't done anything, again, just send me a message. And then we're going to edit it together. And send it to me through the chat. Alrighty, so I got the responses I needed. So for those who did send it, I'll give you the edits later. For those who did not, that's all right. You can always do the homework whenever you like. If you want me to edit it next week, even that's totally up to you. I just put it there for you guys to have some additional practice. But that being said, let's sorry, let me just escape to share the screen one more time. There we go. Better. All right, so let's continue. So same idea of how the course is going to go is that we always start with a quote. Quotes are a great way of helping us think critically of like what um what a few words can really mean altogether. So I have this quote by Anne Frank. And for those who don't know who Anne Frank is, she's a little girl who was in hiding from the Nazis during the Holocaust. Unfortunately, she did not make it. She was found, but she did write a diary of her experience in hiding. And a lot of her quotes are found from that diary, including this one. So, do I have any volunteers of who would like to read the quote? Yep, Jason.
I don't think of all the misery, but of the beauty that still remains.
Mm,
And
awesome. So, Jason, since you read it, now that I want to hear your initial thoughts. What is your perspective on this quote here? What do you think when you read this quote?
I think these writers believe that victory will come one day, and he can see the love and he can see the future for war.
Mm-hmm. Interesting perspective. Great job, Jason. Ryan, what do you think?
Um, like when you do like something wrong, you only think about the good things that you did, like in the thing wrong, not just that you failed, but like how you could learn from the mistake.
That's an amazing example. Yeah, for sure. Tina, what do you think?
It's just like even in like the worst situations, the worst kind of place, the worst time in life, you still realize the good parts of it. Like today something good happened instead of noticing all the bad thing that's happened.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys pretty much nailed it, right? Even when you are in a negative space, in a negative time, like for example, COVID-19 was a huge hit into the entire world. It was a lot of misery for a lot of people. But within that, the world was able to kind of heal itself in many ways. We learned how to, work together for a greater cause. I think there was less tensions around the world. Even the climate, right? The climate has changed for the better a lot because the world took a break from like, processing all this stuff. Nature was starting to heal itself. So there was a lot of things that can happen positively from something negative. So before we do the last question, I want to ask you guys, is there any vocabulary that you're not familiar with in this quote? None? Okay. So then no questions about the vocabulary. So then let's move on to the third question. I want you guys to write about the time you focus on the positive rather than the negative. And how did it help you cope, right? How did it help you through that situation? Um, so take the ideas that we discussed about just now and see if you can apply it to your own experience. And if you can't think of one personally yourself, you can make up one, no problem, or give an example of something that's apart from your own experience. Does anyone have any questions about the last one activity? No. All right, sounds good. So I'm gonna give you guys let's see here. I'll give you around 5 to 10 minutes. I'll check in the 5 minute mark. But if you guys haven't said anything, I can give you more time, but maximum 10 minutes. Okay. So if there's if there's no questions, starting now. Oh, and type what you guys have into the chat and private message me, and then we're gonna edit it together after. Okay. Now we're done. So you can start. All right, so we reached the 5-minute mark. Do we need more time? So how about this? I'll give you guys the extra 5 minutes. If we finish earlier, great. But if not, 5 minutes more. Okay. And for those who have finished early, what I always recommend is doing a self-edit. So it's always good to read over your own work. And not only just reading it over, say it out loud. So it's a great technique when it comes to writing, to always read your work out loud. Because once you read your work out loud, you're able to pick up on how a sentence might be structured weird. It doesn't flow nicely. Sometimes you could miss a comma when you wanted to add a comma. So I recommend doing that. So try to say it out loud your work. And if you notice any changes you want to make, now's the time and you can resend me your paragraph. If not, you have 4 more minutes left. Alrighty, everyone has submitted. So I'm going to stop sharing. Um, I'm going to now edit your work, but because this might be personal experiences, I just want to make sure with everybody, is it okay if I edit it in front of everyone? If someone's uncomfortable of me sharing the story while I edit, just message me and I won't add yours, okay? As I do the open the document, feel free to send me a message if you don't want me to edit it in front of everyone. I can send your edits privately. All right, I'm just going to copy and paste these into a document. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen now. All right, let's go through the edits together. So let's start with Ryan. So Ryan, let me just read out loud. So a time when I focused on the positive instead of the negative was when last Friday we had a big storm. Time when I focused the positive instead of the negative was when I would put the here, was when the last Friday and I would take out when and then put on. And then instead of saying we had a big storm, you can say there was a big storm. So a time when I focused on the positive instead of the negative was on the last Friday. And then we have to have a column. There was a big storm. I was at school when a tree fell on our school and the power lines. Here, there's a bit of repetition. We don't want to say school twice and also so close together. So instead of saying on our school, you can be a little bit more specific. So there's more separation between the two. So, Ryan, did the tree fall on the roof of the school, I'm assuming?
The roof.
The roof, okay. Great. So then what we're gonna do is specify saying on the roof. Oops, roof of the school. And we don't need the power lines here. All right, and so I was at school when a tree fell on the roof of the school. And power lines. Okay, it was about 3 p.m. when the tree fell. So here we can kind of we can connect these two sentences together. So we could say around 3 p.m. I was at school when a tree fell on the roof of the school. Or actually, we can just cancel this out altogether. Technically, we don't need this. So we can say around 3 p.m. I was at school when a tree fell on the roof. Or instead of using the word fell, we can also add fell and landed on the roof and power lines. And then we can take this out. all together. So then for this one, we take out of. So all the power went off instantly, and it was complete chaos. We eventually calmed down. We don't, we don't need the ED here. Just calm down, and went inside the gym to shelter. Instead of 2 here, we would say 4. 4 shelter. At about 6 p.m., the storm cleared out and we were ready for dismissal. Okay. After we got home, we were sad since we couldn't go outside. On the bright side, though, it was a perfect time to take a break from electronic devices. Sure, yeah, that's for sure. I mean, you definitely won't get bored with a storm. It's definitely an intense situation. Just one last thing. We don't need the word though. We can just say on the bright side, it was a perfect time to take a break from electronic devices. And I believe that's all the edits I have for now. Do you have any questions, Ryan, about the work that I've done so far and the edits that I have done?
No.
Nope. All right, sounds good. Okay, Jason. So once I got a bad grade on my test and I was in a really bad mood. So one thing to just remember in writing, it's not the best adding really in front of like a in front of a word like bad or intense or anything like that. The emotion or the adjective that you're having is sufficient enough. So not adding really doesn't add anything. If anything, it just makes it poor writing. So what we want to avoid using the word really. You can use the word really in when you're writing stories. For example, if you're having a dialogue, a lot of times when we speak in person or from a character to a character, characters don't care about grammar, or characters don't really care about those little things of like writing. So we can say like, oh, Chelsea said, I'm in a really bad mood because my sister ate my cookie. That is fine adding that.
Okay.
Next day was the school trip, but to the back grade, I have. So just remember, we are talking in past tense. So we have to keep it in past tense. Just to remember, if you're writing in the past tense, you're gonna the rest of your paragraph is gonna be past tense. If you're talking about an event completely in the past tense, of course. You can say when I got home, my father mentioned the school trip to me. Instead of saying let, a better word would be help. This really worked. So again, don't want to use really. This worked. And then I focus on the school trip instead of. So instead of saying except, we would say instead. When you're comparing one thing to the other, you would use the word instead. I felt better. if you want to add I felt better, what you can do is just combine it with the sentence. So you can say this worked. This worked. You can even add an exclamation part to like really emphasize. I truly felt better. And then I focus on the school trip instead of the back grade. Okay, so that's all the edits I have for now. Jason, do you have any questions?
No, I'm
Okay, perfect. All right, so Tina, when you're experiencing something negative, it's hard to realize the positive things that are also happening. However, remember if you're using the word however or therefore or anything like that, we need to add a comma. There are still times when you do realize. When you're experiencing it, it's hard to realize the positive things. This is kind of repeating yourself of the first sentence. So what we can do here is kind of switch it up. Let's see what we can do. It's hard to realize the positive things. Somebody do realize. What we can do is that, however, there are still times when you're able to, or actually, no, that's bad. When you are to, I think there's a better way of saying this. When there's still times when you remove yourself from that negativity, from that negative, or from negativity, and realize the positive. So if you're gonna kind of emphasize your first point or your first sentence, it's always good to add a little bit more drama, if that makes sense, to your first point. So if you want the reader to really understand that even though you're experiencing something negative and it is hard to realize, once you remove yourself, then you can realize the positive. So that's something always to keep in mind, is that when you're trying to make a point in your first sentence, having the same amount of detail of the exception would be good for the reader to kind of understand. For example, when COVID hit, it was terrible not being able to go outside. However, here we can just break the sentence up. Then we can just use a new sentence. It's always good. Never be afraid to have like a short sentence. It's actually better if we keep the sentence, not too long, because making it a long sentence is not grammatically great. And also when you're adding new points, it's always good to start a new sentence, because if you're talking about not being able to go outside and then you're talking about your realization, those are two different things. So keeping them separate is always good. So I realized that I could use this time to work on some of my hobbies that can be done indoors. I also chatted with my friends online, and it helped me cope with not being able to go outside and the threat of the virus. Okay, so here, just a few recommendations is talk about your hobbies. Adding a little bit more detail would be really good here. And adding it is not a bad thing, but a lot of time with writing, you're gonna get people who edit your work and always say like, what do you mean by it? Be a little bit more detailed in that aspect. So writing it is fine for the most part, but there are times when people are going to be picky and want you to specify. So in this case, you can just say, like you can say these mechanisms, or you can say these experiences, and etc. Just it's not like much detail. You don't have to relist everything, but adding that confirmation that it was the hobbies and the chatting with the friends that helped me cope. And I believe that is all the edits I have for you, Tina. Do you have any questions about why I added what I added? Any questions about my edits? No? No questions, Tina? Okay, sounds good. So then let's continue with the slide show. Okay, let's go back. Awesome. Okay, so short stories. So one thing that I wanted to add is that with short stories, it's not just a story in itself. Sometimes it can be speeches. Sometimes it could be an actual biography. So don't worry, it's not just going to be a story after story after story. Sometimes it could be more news articles. It can be any type of written piece, and we'll discuss about it. So in this case, we are going to talk about the Gettysburg Address, which is a famous speech written by Abraham Lincoln. This speech is quite one of the most recognizable speeches, especially the beginning part. If you haven't heard of it, I'm very excited to show it to you. So let me stop sharing and I will pull up the speech right now. Okay. So here is the Gettysburg Address, the speech. It's very short. It's just from here to here. Now we're going to be seeing a lot of Old English. Not old in a sense that the vocabulary is not old, but the way the words are used and the ways the sentences are structured is not something that we see much of today. Now, before we read the speech, I just want to quickly explain what it is. It's basically a start of hope for what was happening at the time, because at the time there was a civil war in the United States. For those who don't know who Abraham Lincoln is, was one of the presidents of the United States, and he's famously known for is abolishing slavery to a certain point. Now, within this civil war, there was two sides, of course, one about freeing people and one about not freeing people. People wanted to have a certain aspect of the United States to be known. So a beautiful thing about this Gettysburg's Address is this idea that they were struggling for their national identity. And what that means is like, what does it mean to be a United States citizen? And those two sides had very different perspectives of what it means to be a United States citizen. So remember, the speech was studied throughout the world for its historical, political, and cultural significance. And remember, and as we read it, I want to make sure that you guys are paying the most attention to these three aspects, because that's one of the questions. How is it historical? How is it political? And how is it culturally significant to the United States, and maybe even to a lot of other places? All right. So that being said, what we're going to do is going to read these three small paragraphs. So let's start with Jason. Jason, can you please read the first paragraph up to equal?
407 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to be the proposition that all men are created equal.
All right. So let's discuss this first paragraph here. 407 years ago. Does anyone have an idea of what this really means, the 407 years ago? What is Abraham Lincoln talking about when he says 407 years ago? Any ideas? If you don't want to say it out loud, by the way, you guys can message me what do you guys think as well in this aspect. So 407 years ago. Any ideas? No? Okay. So then I'll just let you guys know now is that Abraham Lincoln is just talking about time, right? The time when our fathers brought forth upon this continent, new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. So what is Abraham Lincoln saying now altogether in this paragraph? So what do you think, Jason? What is Abraham Lincoln saying in this first paragraph?
He wants to mention that all men are created equal in the continent.
Yeah, exactly right. What do you think, Ryan? Do you have anything to add? What about you, Tina? Anything to add? No? Okay. So yeah, to Jason's point, basically, what Abraham is trying to do here is emphasize the idea that when the United States was discovered, it was discovered on the idea that all people were going to receive freedom, and they were all dedicated to the idea that all men are created equal, because a whole reason of why people left the UK, Britain, Spain, and all those countries was a lot of it was because of religious freedom. right? Having the freedom to do what you want and not being treated differently any otherwise. All right, so let's go to the second paragraph. So Ryan, can you please read the second paragraph?
My internet was lagging. Can you say it again?
Sorry, what did you say, Ryan?
My internet is lagging. Can you say it again?
Oh, of course. Can you please read the second paragraph?
Okay. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this.
Okay, awesome. So, Ryan, what do you think about the second paragraph? What do you think Abraham Lincoln is trying to say here?
Maybe like see how long the nation could live. How long can their leader endure?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Does anyone else have anything to add? Jason?
We want to mention that years ago, their father fight for the equals in this land, and they needed to keep it
Yeah.
to continue it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Tina, anything to add? Nope. Alrighty, so yeah. Great points. For sure that we have to, there is a lot of endurance that the people have to go through, right? It's hard, civil war. Well, war in general is very hard and very impacting to the mind. And we have this declaration from Abraham Lincoln saying, we are met on the great battlefield of the war. So we're going to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place. So basically, he's giving a piece of that land to the soldiers who have died in. And it's especially important to remember that it is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. So Abraham is saying it is the right thing to do, to give this piece of land to the people who have died in the war. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Hi Roru, welcome to the welcome. So Boru, what we're doing is just reading about Abraham Lincoln's speech during the Civil War. I'm not sure if you're too familiar with it, but just in general, that Abraham Lincoln is giving a speech during the Civil War. The Civil War is about, freeing slavery and bringing this idea of all men are created equal. So that being said, Bora, would you like to read the last paragraph? Starting with but and ending in earth.
But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hollow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it. Far above our poor power to add or detract, the world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they give They gave the last full measure of devotion that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation and under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, should not perish from the earth.
Awesome. So this is quite a intense paragraph. A lot of interesting sentence structure. So I will personally just tell you guys that what this paragraph is trying to say. So let's start with the first two sentences. In the first two sentences, we're still going off of what the second paragraph said, right? Giving this land to the fallen soldiers. But then he emphasizes the point that we cannot dedicate, consecrate, or hollow this ground, basically saying that we cannot make it anything more than what it is, right? We can't make it into like some shrine or something sacred or anything like that. This piece of land of where the men are going to be buried in is going to represent exactly what it is, which is basically a remembrance of the people who have died and why they have died. All right. And then in the second part, Abraham Lincoln is saying, it is us for the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work. And this is where kind of the motivation aspect of that speech is coming into play, right? Abraham's asking the people, we cannot stop here, right? We have to continue and finish the work that people have died for, because we have to, apply this devotion so that we can get the results that we were all fighting for, which is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Okay. And that is the total idea of the speech. So just kind of to summarize everything of what the speech is all about is first Abraham Lincoln stating the facts, right? Saying that this land was founded for people to all be equal, but we're being tested on that right now with the Civil War, right? The Civil War is challenging that idea, and we have to endure it because there's a lot of people that are dying, and because of this, we're going to dedicate some land. And then the other point that we're going to have to remember is that this land should not be anything more than what it is, which is a graveyard of the fallen soldiers. And Lincoln's last point is finishing what they have started, right? Finishing what the goals are, which is creating a equal government. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, but before I do, does anyone have any questions about this speech? None? All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to assume now that everybody knows and understands what the speech is, because now we're going to do some activities here. So, with our activity, you guys are going to do 3 sections of this activity, which is writing a short summary of the speech, right? You can talk about exactly what he said or what it's about. It's up to you. But this the idea of a summary is when a reader reads a summary, they know exactly what they're about to read of the Gettysburg Address. So think about that. Like when you're writing a summary, think about how can I come across to the reader to fully understand what they're about to read. So think about that. And then the second part is write where the story was significant culturally, historically, and politically. Okay. Try to give as much examples as possible. But it's okay if you only are able to do a few. But think about how it impacted culture historically and politically. And then your last part is write a paragraph thinking of this question. Did Abraham focus on the misery or the beauty that remains, and why? So what this question means is that where Abraham was in the middle of a civil war, what did he do with his speech? Did he say, "Oh, this war is is miserable. They all died," or did he say something that was positive? Right? Did he say something that was beautiful at the end? So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to send these questions into the chat. Okay, so then while I share the screen, it's not going to be of this slide, it's actually going to be of the speech itself. So then if you guys forget of part of the speech or forget what the speech was about, you guys can read it again. So I just sent the questions in the chat. Okay, so while you're writing, you can look in the chat, and then I'm also going to share the speech on the screen. So then you have something to kind of go back to. Where is it? There we go. All right, here we go. So there is 3 questions. 2 of them should be pretty short, so it shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes to do. Because you're not writing, you don't need to write a full paragraph, even a sentence or 2 for the first 2 questions is enough. And then for the last one, just a quick little paragraph of the last question. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys 15 minutes, and then we'll go over through the edits together. Does anyone have any questions? No?
Did
All
I need to write all these 3 questions in a paragraph?
So you're gonna write each question separately. But in the same message. So for example, you're gonna write like question 1, da 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 da. And then you're gonna, oh wait, that was a bad question 1. Actually, no, you can do it this way. Question 2, da 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 da, and then question 3, da 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 da. So and private message me in the chat your answers like this. So then, but make sure to label which question is each one. So it's not all together, it's just it's gonna be 3 different written pieces that I'm gonna receive from you guys. Did that help answer your question, Jason?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good. So I'll give you 15 minutes starting now. So how are we doing on time? Would everyone like an extra 5 minutes? Or if you would like to you have another 5 minutes, put a thumbs up with the hand gesture. Okay, we got one thumbs up for an extra 5 minutes. Who would like more time? Okay, so I'll give you guys an extra 4 minutes, okay? 4 minutes, and then we'll go to the next step. So finish as much as you can in the next 4 minutes. For those who for those who have already finished, just remember, right? My recommendation: when you finish your writing, it's always good to read it over out loud. So say your paragraphs out loud helps you find any grammatical mistakes, or when your sentence kind of sounds choppy or a little awkward. So if you're already finished, I recommend doing that in the next 3 minutes now. So 3 minutes. Already time is up. Please send your paragraphs and then in the chat, and then I'm going to put it into a document. I'll start editing. So I'm going to stop sharing. All right, I'm still waiting on some responses. It's okay if you guys haven't finished all the questions. I just want to receive something. Doesn't have to be everything, but something would be great. All right, so as we're waiting for, the responses, it's okay if you guys haven't finished everything. What I'm planning to do now is that because of time, I want to go through these edits quite thoroughly. So what we're going to do is I'm going to leave the edits for next week. And what we're going to do next week is a first thing in class is we're going to go over everyone's responses. So if you have not finished the questions for what we have done, you'll have the week to complete them. If you want some edits and feedback, of course. Now let's go into some vocabulary that I prepared for. Going to share the screen. All right. So we have two vocabulary words that I prepared for today, which is demure and harbinger, sorry. So, who would like to read the first vocabulary word? Yep, Jason.
Mirror. Adjective. When describing something observed, such as clothing or an attitude, demure means not attracting or demanding a lot of attention. Example, it's an elegant gown with a demure neckline.
Awesome. And then who would like to read the second vocabulary, harbinger? Boru, would you like to read this vocabulary here, harbinger?
Harbinger, noun. A harbinger is something that foreshadows or gives an early indication of something that will happen in the future.
Okay. Ryan, would you like to read the example of using harbinger?
Example, when the star running back went down with an injury in the team's first game, it turned out to be a harbinger of a disappointing season.
Awesome. Alrighty, so what we're gonna do here is what I want you guys to do is write two sentences using a sentence for each vocabulary word. So I want you to write a sentence using demure and a sentence using harbinger. Okay. And then send me your examples in the chat. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. 5 minutes to write two sentences. Does anyone have any questions about the vocabulary and what they mean? No? All right. So then 5 minutes and then we'll go over the sentences together. All right, 1 more minute. Finish up your last sentences. Okay, time is up. I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to input your responses into the doc. Alrighty, so I'm gonna share the screen and let's go over your sentences real quick. Okay, so Jason, he is a demure person, or he listens carefully to what teacher says. Okay, so we need to kind of take out some words and we switch. So here, if we're gonna say the reason why, we have to say because. Because he listens carefully to what? And then it's always good to add a little bit more what the teachers have to say. Okay. So grammatically now that the sentence is okay. However, when you describe demure as a person, we're talking about being humble and being quiet and timid. So a good way to kind of emphasize, if someone is a demure person, is like saying here, without interruption. So adding the without interruption adds a little bit more detail in the sense that like Jason will remain quiet. I'm sorry, the person that Jason's talking about will remain quiet and listen carefully because he's humble. I saw that you corrected this, Jason, so I won't say a thing. So later, a harbinger said he could be a successful person. So let's stop sharing. Let's remind ourselves what harbinger means. It's something that foreshadows or gives an early indication of something that will happen in the future, right? So we cannot really say someone's a harbinger only because unless they're a fortune teller, right? So we could say later, a harbinger said that he could be a successful person. So what we could say is that we could say later a fortune teller let's see, later a fortune teller what we can say is the fortune teller. Oh, sorry, I didn't notice that it was still sharing. Later, a fortune teller was a harbinger, and you can say predicted, be a better word, predicted he could be a successful person. Okay, that's all the edits I have for your sentences. Jason, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Okay, then that is everything for Jason. So, Jason, that is it for you, and the session did end, so you can leave if you like. I'm just gonna continue with the edits real quick about Tina and Ryan. Okay, so Ryan, my friend's t-shirt is demure, perfect. When the storm happened, it was a harbinger to the power going out. Yep, that makes sense. Okay. what you could say here is as the storm is happening. It was a harbinger. That's another way of saying it, but that's fine. And then the same Razor Blazer was a harbinger of the impending catastrophe in the quiet town. Awesome job, Tina. So that's a great way to bring both aspects all together. Yep, I have no edits here. Does anyone have any questions regarding today's session? No? Okay, so like I said, if you guys haven't finished the questions of the storytelling, right, about the speech of Abraham Lincoln, please finish it for next week so then I can give you guys your edits. But if not, we'll talk about what has been sent already. Okay, so have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jason. Great job today.
Bye.
Bye, Tina.